Good afternoon, sir. My question is that what inspired you to pursue career both in politics and in writing, and how do these two passions intersect in your life? Thank you.
That's a very sweet question. Thank you. Well, actually, on the why I was a writer, I have to say the best answer was given 100 years ago by George Bernard Shaw, the famous Irish playwright and writer, who said, "I write for the same reason a cow gives milk." In other words, it's inside you, it's got to come out, and in a very real sense, you'd be in pain if it didn't. I started writing as a very small child. I was an asthmatic child, struggling to breathe. In those days, there were no inhalers and nebulizers. They would give you very strong tablets, which would make your heart go thud, thud, thud. And sitting there, 3-year-old, 4-year-old boy, gasping for air, unable to sleep, because if you lay down, you could not breathe. So I'd be sitting up in bed and suffering. And in those days, there was no television in India. There were no Nintendo or PlayStation, no laptop computers. No one had even dreamt of inventing a mobile phone. So what do you do? All I could do was to read. I started reading precociously young, and I read widely and indiscriminately. And because I was the oldest child in the family, nobody else to borrow books from. So when I finished the books that I could understand, I started reading my parents' books on the bookshelves around me. And those were books, obviously, that I couldn't fully understand. But I tried anyway. I managed to get a sense of much that was going on. And that's how books became my escape, my entertainment, and my education. And then with that, when I ran out of even those of my parents' books I could understand, what could I do? I thought I may as well write. If I didn't have stories I could read, I'd write stories like the ones I enjoyed reading. And so I started writing at a very young age. When I was about 6 years old, I was writing stories. I was blessed to have a father who encouraged me and got my stories typed up by his secretary so they could be shown to friends. And when I was 10 years old, one of my stories was published in the Sunday edition of a Bombay newspaper, and that was enough. You know, it's like the first bite of chocolate or the first the first kiss or something is when you see your name in print for the first time. It becomes something you want to keep doing over and over again. And the result was that I kept writing throughout my school days and college days and so on. I wrote, and even when I started my working life in the UN, I would work sort of morning to evening at the office, come back, and in the evening try and write. And it was just simply the way I was. I couldn't help it, as I said, as George Bernard Shaw said. And then when my writing was published, I began to believe in myself as a writer. But at the same time, I had a career that also meant something to me. For a long time, I was doing some very interesting work in the UN. I worked for refugees for the first 11 years. Then I was in peacekeeping for another 8 years, where I was in charge of the terrible civil war in the former Yugoslavia from the UN peacekeeping point of view. At the end of all that, I joined the Secretary General's office, worked for Kofi Annan, then I got kicked upstairs, as it were, to be an Under-Secretary General myself. So I had very, very interesting work throughout my UN career, and I wasn't going to give it up to write. So I would write at nights, I would write at weekends, I would write in parking lots, I would write on planes, because I couldn't help myself stopping writing, but it was always secondary to my work. And the same thing happened when I came into politics. I came into India when I was invited by the Congress Party to contest the elections of 2009, and having returned to India, I took this on, enjoyed it immensely. The election itself was very tough. Toughest thing I've done, harder than walking through a minefield in Bosnia. But nonetheless, having won it, I kept continuing. And then, because I had lots to say, the old habit of writing was still there, I would again write whenever I could find the time. Now, being a Lok Sabha politician, it's not always easy to find the time because your constituents always come first, and the party comes second, and you yourself will have to come third. But having said that, whenever I can, I've been writing, and I'm proud to say that some of my writings may have contributed to the national conversation about the issues I care about in politics. So yes, there's now been an intersection, to some degree, between my writing and my politics. I say to some degree because not all my writing is about politics. I write about anything that interests me. But when I get into writing about politics, yes, then it becomes very much a reflection of the kinds of positions that I advocate within my party or in parliament or in the public space. And so there the interaction between the two is always there. But I'll be very honest with you. I'm already a former minister. One day I'll be a former MP, but I don't intend ever to be a former writer. As long as the good Lord gives me something to think about and the ability to write it, I will continue to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.